It's impressive that you can't even serve a glass of water with the slightest bit of efficiency." The billionaire's voice, Harrison Vale, cut through the dining room like a thin, cold blade. The entire restaurant fell silent. Glasses trembled in the waiter's hands. The young waitress serving him, Nora Beckett, stood still, trying to stop her fingers from shaking. The bottle, still open, reflected the golden light of the Marcelline, one of Manhattan's most exclusive addresses. The billionaire leaned back in his leather chair, crossed his legs, and gave a slow, cruel smile. "You must be new here," he said, with that smile that always came before the venom. "And it seems I've been blessed with the task of educating a clumsy waitress. I hope your learning curve is quick. My patience, unlike your tray, has limits." The table burst into laughter. Suit-clad executives exchanged complicit glances, entertained by the spectacle. The waitress, Nora, was the target of the night, and Harrison, the man who found pleasure in turning humiliation into a pastime. The manager, away attending to an investor in the private room, didn't see what was happening. And the rest of the staff only pretended not to notice. After all, Harrison Vale was the client everyone feared, a billionaire in the financial sector, meticulous to the last millimeter, a man whose fortune bought silence and tolerance. No employee dared to contradict him. It was an unspoken rule: if he came on a Tuesday, dinner would be a minefield. But the young waitress had no idea. Newly hired, she was in her second week at the restaurant. She had come from Ohio, with a brand new uniform and the hope of saving enough money to return to the college she'd had to leave. She didn't know that Harrison Vale despised delays of even seconds, misplaced glasses, and, above all, faces that didn't bow quickly enough. When he snapped his fingers and raised an eyebrow, the dining room seemed to hold its breath. "What are you waiting for, Miss Beckett? For me to teach you the basics?" The waitress took a deep breath, her heart racing, but her gaze remained steady. "I'm sorry, sir. I'll fix it immediately." "Yes," he replied, with a faint, disdainful smile, "fix it before you manage to turn a five-star restaurant into a crash course in incompetence." The laughter resumed. And at that moment, as the blush rose to her face, Nora Beckett promised herself that it would be the first and last time anyone would humiliate her in public. The room still laughed, but there was something different in her eyes now, a quiet spark, ready to turn the game around. What no one imagined was that before the night was over, the rookie waitress would teach the most arrogant man in Manhattan what no amount of money could buy: respect. "And you, what would you do if someone tried to humiliate you in front of an entire audience? Write it down in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts." Harrison Vale's laughter still echoed as he set down his glass, with the same bored satisfaction of a man who'd already won the meeting. "Ah, Manhattan's been generous with me," he said, loud enough for the room to hear. "First they served me the wrong wine, and now they offer me an improv show. The Marcelline should start charging admission." The executives at the table laughed, not out of amusement, but out of fear. The sound came out forced, uneasy. The waitress stood firm. The tray in her hand trembled only at the edges, but her gaze stayed locked, unwavering. From across the dining room, an older waiter made a move to approach, trying to spare her. The ruthless billionaire stopped him before he took a second step. "No. She started it, she finishes it." The words sounded like a sentence. The once elegant atmosphere had turned into a stage of tension. Customers pretended to chat, but watched through the mirror's reflections as if witnessing a duel disguised as dinner. Harrison folded his hands and leaned forward. "So then, Miss Beckett, since tonight seems to be full of surprises, tell me, what's so special about this dish? I assume you've at least bothered to learn what this restaurant serves." The words dripped with venom. Nora took a deep breath. The dish in question, a fillet with an herb crust and red wine reduction, rested before him like a silent witness. "Of course, sir," she replied, controlling her tone. The crust locks in the juices and contrasts with the light bitterness of the wine. The chef uses a Merlot reduction, not Cabernet, to balance the salt and prevent the sauce from overpowering the flavor of the meat. It's a technical choice, and the right one. The dining room went silent. The laughter died halfway through the executives' throats. The billionaire froze, his fork suspended halfway to the plate. For a brief moment, the man known for never losing his words seemed to have them all confiscated. "Merlot, you said," he murmured, as if repeating something he shouldn't need to confirm. "Yes, sir," she replied without arrogance. "Cabernet would have been the mistake you mentioned earlier." A long pause. His gaze dropped to the plate, then rose back to her. The same smile, now awkward. "I see you've got quite the memory." "I do my best to deserve the place I'm in," the waitress said. The tray lowered slowly. The soft sound of the glass resting on the sideboard felt like a period at the end of a sentence. No one moved. The maitre d', standing at a distance, exhaled in relief. One of the waiters whispered "My God" under his breath. Harrison Vale cleared his throat, trying to regain control, but the atmosphere had already shifted. The predator had lost his edge. She stepped back, professional, composed. "Would you like anything else, sir?" He hesitated. "For now, no." The restaurant, which only minutes earlier had been breathing fear, now watched in silence a rare scene, arrogance staring into its own reflection. Nora turned away, the sound of her heels filling the void. What no one knew was that the silence wasn't the end, it was the beginning of Harrison Vale's fall. If you enjoy stories where arrogance is defeated by the wisdom of humble people, subscribe to the channel, it helps us keep bringing you incredible stories. Harrison Vale wasn't a man who gave up. And even less so, one who admitted defeat, especially in front of an entire dining room that, even without saying a word, seemed to have discreetly taken the waitress's side. He crossed his arms, fixing his gaze on Nora Beckett, a look heavier than any insult. "Since you seem to understand so much about technique," he said, his tone almost polite, "let's see if you understand precision." The table leaned in, silent. Even the executives set down their cutlery. "I want the filet medium rare, but with no pink in the center. Exact temperature, 120 degrees. If it's over by a degree, send it back. If it's under, send it back too." A murmur rippled through the room. One of the cooks at the pass muttered, "That's impossible." Nora simply nodded, calmly taking notes. "Perfectly understood, sir." Harrison raised an eyebrow, surprised by her lack of hesitation. "Understood, really?" "Yes. I'll personally make sure it's served exactly as you requested." She turned and walked to the kitchen. The chef protested the moment she repeated the order. 120 exactly? He wants the steak both raw and cooked at the same time. Nora kept her tone serene. He doesn't want meat. He wants control. So let's give him control in the shape of perfection. She supervised every step, stopwatch in hand. Adjusted the searing time, monitored the digital thermometer, and waited for the precise moment before signaling, "Now." The dish left the kitchen flawless, seared perfectly on the outside, juicy inside, not a trace of pink in sight. When Nora returned to the table, she set down the plate with surgical precision. "The filet, sir. Temperature, exactly 120 degrees." Harrison leaned forward, cut the first slice, and inspected the inside. Not a trace of pink. He brought the piece to his mouth, chewed slowly. Then another. The entire dining room seemed to hold its breath with him. Finally, he set down the fork. "Admirable." A pause. "But tell me, Miss Beckett, do you really believe respect can't be bought?" Nora met his gaze calmly. "If it could," she replied evenly, "you wouldn't have to test people to find it." The silence that followed was absolute. No glass moved. No waiter dared to breathe too loudly. Her words echoed through the restaurant's marble columns like a clean strike. A glass fell somewhere across the room, the metallic sound snapping the tension. Nora reacted before anyone else. She crossed the floor, gathered the shards, wiped the spilled wine, requested another glass, and returned without fuss. The movement was so swift and natural it looked choreographed. Harrison watched her the entire time. Her composure unsettled him. It wasn't provocation nor defiance. It was mastery. A kind of elegance no university could ever teach. When Nora disappeared through the kitchen door, he made a discreet gesture to the manager. "Who trained her?" "No one, sir. She learned by observing." Harrison nodded slowly. "Good." The plate before him was growing cold, but for the first time in years, he didn't care. Because he realized that of all the people in that restaurant, only one possessed something his money had never been able to buy. But the real test was yet to come, and Nora Beckett had no idea. Dinner ended without applause or farewells. Harrison Vale simply stood, adjusted his suit jacket, and motioned for the waiter to bring the check. Nora watched from a distance, maintaining her usual composure, professional, restrained, as if nothing that night had ever happened. He signed the receipt, left the folded bill on the table, and walked out with the same confident stride of a man who commands his own fate. No glance back. No words. When the dining room finally emptied, Nora cleared the last dishes, wiped down the table, and picked up the folded bill to take it to the register. When she opened it, something caught her attention, a note tucked beneath the receipt. "For the record, you passed. Apply to the Vail Scholars Program. Tuition covered. HV." For a moment, she thought it was a joke. A mistake. Some kind of cruel prank. But the amount of the tip written below was real, absurdly high, enough to pay for an entire semester of tuition. That night, Nora could hardly sleep. The image of that signature HV spun in her mind like a riddle. The next morning, before her shift, she searched the name Vail Scholars Program. And there it was, a program by the Vail Foundation, created to fund professional education for people from low-income backgrounds. Founder's name, Harrison Vale. When the manager saw her walk in holding the paper, he frowned. This came from him? It did. Michael took the note, read it, and shook his head in disbelief. He doesn't do this. Ever. Harrison Vale doesn't tip beyond standard, and he never leaves personal cards. Then why me? Nora asked. The manager smiled, with a kind of respect he seemed to be rediscovering himself. Maybe because, for the first time, someone spoke to him as an equal. Months later, the Marcelline was alive with a gala dinner. Amid waiters and guests, a new figure crossed the hall with steady steps. Her uniform was of fine fabric, a golden badge gleaming on her chest. Nora Beckett, Assistant Manager, Intern Program. Harrison Vale sat at a distant table, speaking with investors. When their eyes met, he simply gave a nod, brief, but sincere. Nora returned it with the same quiet respect. Nothing needed to be said. The man who once believed respect could be bought had discovered that character is never for sale. And the young woman once humiliated before everyone now walked with her head held high, proving that dignity, when upheld with courage, can change even the eyes of those who once looked down on you. That night, no lesson was spoken, but one was served. Sometimes, the most valuable tip is the chance to start over. If this story touched your heart, leave a like and tell us in the comments. What's worth more, money or respect?